Testing the mic, testing the mic. I'm waiting for audio on my end. We will begin as soon as I can hear my own voice. Perfect. Got it. So, as far as I'm concerned, we are live. If not, please let me know in the comments section below, and we'll amend that. How's everybody doing today? This is Ramsey Dewey coming to you from Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with the Coach, episode number 830. That kind of seems like a lot of episodes of Q&A with the Coach, doesn't it? Well, I've made a lot of videos on this channel. I've been making videos for over 17 years on YouTube. And yeah, believe it or not, I started making comedy videos on YouTube. Those were the original videos that I was uploading 17 years ago. And yeah, man. So I recently posted a comedy video that my daughter and I made together. And yeah, go watch it. If you like, say, for example, Elder Scrolls, Oblivion, Skyrim, that sort of thing, we made a parody. It was a lot of fun. So you might enjoy that. So welcome everybody to the live stream. This is going to be a Q&A. If you have questions, put them in the chat and we will get to them. And I don't see any questions yet, so I'm just going to start talking about... Oh, there's a question already. Sweet Anthony Nguyen says, hey coach, question for you. What is your preferred way to warm up before sparring? Or is there anything wrong with doing very light sparring as the warm-up? What do I do for a warm-up? I rotate my joints. Start with the wrists. I'm old, guys. I need this. Got to lubricate the joints to avoid injuries, man. And I remember I saw a video. What's his name? Tyler Spangler, jiu-jitsu guy, put out the other day. He visited, what's his name? One of the Gracie's gyms. He run Gracie's gym, and he was surprised that they were warming up their wrists before they're sparring, before they're rolling. He said, I'd never seen anybody do that in a jiu-jitsu class before. And it doesn't surprise me because jiu-jitsu athletes tend to be terrible athletes and tend to put the least possible science application into their training as you can imagine. And here's what I mean by that. If you contrast that with, say, girls' gymnastics for children's gymnastics, the first thing they will do is warm up their wrists because the wrist is going to be bending and taking impact and doing all kinds of things that are hard on the wrist. So you got to warm those up. Now, that issue is exacerbated in the gi. If you're gripping and grabbing in the gi, that's and people are trying to strip your grips. Yeah, you gotta warm up your wrists. The older you get, the more important you're gonna realize that is. What else do I do for my warm-ups? I rotate all the joints. Stretch out the neck, up and down, left and right. Warm up my spine. Do a bunch of circular motions, this sort of thing. Now, warm-ups are often really dumb in martial arts classes. Warm-ups are often stupid and unnecessary, the warm-ups that people do. A warm-up should prepare your body to move, and it should prepare your mind for action. And if your warm-up isn't doing that, if it's just getting you sweaty and tired, probably not a great warm-up. Now, I've seen some warm-ups that are basically you do a few push-ups, do a few squats, do a few jumping jacks, jog a couple of laps around the gym, and it's not bad for you. It's not terrible. It's not a terrible idea to get physically warm before you start sparring, but how do jiu-jitsu classes usually do it? They do this intense warm-up, and then they do technique, and they're just cooling down the whole time they're doing this technique. Contrast that with say my friend Dan Lukart over at Brea Jiu-Jitsu, his warm-up is the technique. You go in there, they start doing the technique. You get a bunch of reps, you're moving the way you're going to move, and yeah, it's pretty low impact stuff doing sequences in a warm-up, so you're probably not going to sprain something or tear a hamstring. We got a question from Troll Police. I didn't even finish talking about the warm-ups that I do, but after that, I'll get to your question, Troll Police. I do a lot of tumbling. Man, there's a lot of background noise there. I'm going to pop my headphones on just to filter that out. Helps me focus more when I can hear what I'm actually saying to you. Okay. And we're back. So, I do a lot of tumbling. A lot of tumbling. So what that means, forward rolls, backward rolls, cartwheels, shoulder rolls forward and back, handstand rolls, Granby rolls, controlled falling is what that is. What time is it where I am? It is 5:11 p.m. in Shanghai. So the Troll Police has a couple of questions. I got a question. I've been working on combining techniques from Muay Thai and Taekwondo in my kicks. That is the foot and hip rotation plus balancing of Muay Thai with the flicking of the leg at the end. Okay, that's cool. Now, if you have a good Muay Thai instructor, like someone who really understands the art of Muay Thai, they will teach you a broad variety of ways to kick, including what you're describing. One of my coaches, this fellow named Rock Chanan Sinso, excellent Muay Thai fighter, former Lumpini Stadium, boxing stadium champion. I asked him once because I noticed he had extremely powerful roundhouse kicks. And I asked him, how is it that you kick so hard? Like, teach me how to do that kick. And he said, well, which kick? What kind of kick? The round kick. What kind of round kick? Round kick to the body. What kind of round kick to the body? And he asked like a dozen qualifying questions because you know what? There are many, many ways to kick in Muay Thai. It's not a limitation of technique. It's a limitation of your imagination is what it is. Tumbling is a lot more fun than jogging and stretching that people generally do in martial arts classes. So yeah, definitely work on your tumbling. Tumbling will save your life. People always ask me, Ramsey, have you ever used your martial arts in real life? And they really don't like the answer. Yeah, I used to be a professional fighter in real life. Made a living off of that for a while, man. They're like, no, I mean on the streets. Okay, we're going to talk about the streets. Yes, I used my martial arts training on the streets, but it's not what you think. I'm riding my bike, going down a hill. My front tire of the bike goes into a pothole. It's a pretty steep decline. The bike goes down, the seat bucks me up. I go flying through the air, and as I'm flying, I do a forward shoulder roll, and I land harmlessly on the ground. Not a scratch on me. The bike is bent in half. I'm fine. A bystander walking by looks by, and he says, "Did you just do a cool ninja flip in the air?" I look at him and I say, "Why, yes, I did." So there you go. Real life application of martial arts that can save your life. Work on your tumbling every single day. That, in my opinion, is the best way to warm up. Rotate your joints, do tumbling. Okay. What else do we have? How much will MMA actually help me when a band of local thugs opens a trapdoor underneath my feet and drops me into a pit of alligators? That depends on whether or not the alligators are in water or if they are on dry land. If they're in water, you're pretty much screwed. If they're on dry land, you might be able to use some of your skills to save your life. It also depends on how many alligators there are, how big the alligators are. The size and age of the alligator is pretty important. If they're just little baby ones, they might gnaw on your fingers a little bit. But if they're very large ones, that's a problem. Korosu says, how do I learn to shift my weight correctly to get the most out of my punches? Watch my videos about that topic. Learn the falling step, learn the trigger step. Learn how to throw a hook. Watch my video. Hooks are not swings. Hooks are straight punches. I know a lot of people took issue with that title because a lot of people throw hooks wrong. And people hate being called out on being wrong. Man, I got in a bit of a discussion the other day. So I put out a poll asking, do you know the difference between a slam and a throw in the sport of jiu-jitsu? And most people said, no, I actually don't know the difference between a slam and a throw in the sport of jiu-jitsu. And some people said, yes. Okay. And then some people wrote in the comments, pretty snide comments like, I already know, I don't need to watch your effing video to understand what a slam is. So these kind of snide people, I asked them, well, okay, a lot of people think they know and a lot of people are wrong, so what do you think it is? And he proceeded to describe everything except for what a slam actually is in the sport of jiu-jitsu, and even went so far as to say that slamming is illegal in the sport of mixed martial arts, which it is not, by the way. It's strongly encouraged, and hundreds of fights are won by slams in mixed martial arts. And then he went on to say the suplex is illegal in the sport of professional mixed martial arts. He's not even talking about IBJJF, where the suplex isn't even banned. Now, the IBJJF has stipulations about how to do the suplex. They did add an addendum to that a few years ago, but you can still suplex in the IBJJF. I'm a professional mixed martial arts referee. I've done this for years. It's literally my job to know the rules of the sport and to stay current on it. The suplex is a perfectly legal technique. And I would just love to read this comment, this reply to you, because it's precious. It is absolutely precious. If you Google, is suplex allowed in MMA, you will see what I'm talking about. And he goes on to say this. The suplex would be any fighter's idea of a worst idea in the ring. I don't know what that is. But because there are several rules and regulations regarding using this technique in the UFC, according to UFC's regulations, a fighter is not allowed to throw an opponent on their neck or head using a suplex. June 27th, 2023. And I wondered why he wrote that date there. And so I Googled that. And you know what I came up with? EliteSports.com, the apparel, the clothing company. He got this from a clothing company website, posting some misinformation about UFC rules. He goes on to say, being a referee/coach somewhere in Shanghai and a content creator for YouTube doesn't qualify you as a bona fide know-it-all on any topic. Yeah, being an actual expert on a topic does not qualify you as an expert on the topic. So here's what the actual rule says. Let's look it up. From section 6.A in the fouls section, any throw with an arc to its motion is to be considered a legal throw. It does not matter if the opponent's head hits the canvas. The only banned throw in mixed martial arts is spiking, aka the pile driver. Inverting your opponent, lifting them from the hips, and driving their head directly down into the mat. That's the only banned throw. Anyway, that's a little rant I had. And man, it is just precious how many people will try to argue about rules like this when they have no clue what they're talking about. Doesn't matter what credentials you have, what experience you have. Doesn't matter if you are a professional in your field. If it's literally your job to know the rules, man, they will fight you tooth and nail as long as they don't actually have to get in a real fight with you. We have a super chat. Sweet, a super chat has come from the Jughead 1. Happy New Year, Ramsey. No question, just showing my appreciation, love, and respect from the UK, brother. Thank you very much. Anthony Nguyen saw my video about using the Philly shell for wrestling, essentially to secure the underhook when your opponent moves. And how do you use it for striking? The Philly shell, how do you use it for striking? You punch and you kick. Philly shell puts you in a side stance, essentially. And so that is a stance where you are going to be outside of leg kick range, but inside of side kick, back kick range. It's not a stance you're going to be married to the entire duration of a fight. The most successful fighters in mixed martial arts are the switch hitters, if you will, the people who switch their stance from orthodox to southpaw, etc., etc., and not because that is inherently the best way to fight, but because the most successful fighters in mixed martial arts are wrestlers. And wrestlers, right-handed wrestlers, generally fight with their right leg forward. Right-handed strikers fight with their left leg, left hand forward. When a wrestler learns striking, there's a bunch of code switching going on in the mind, and so they will often switch stance between the one they're used to for grappling and the one they're used to for striking, learning it as essentially a second movement language. The lesson there is you've got to change your stance constantly depending on the situation. And the Philly shell or the side stance in MMA is one you will be in at a very specific range and not at others. It works when you're very close, putting pressure on the other guy, searching for the underhook. It works when you're way outside of the pocket. It does not work toe-to-toe. It does not work in the pocket. So, learn your stances, switch them up, learn which is which and what is for what. Alvaro says, I've observed a lot of successful martial artists and athletes in general tend to have a good memory, being able to remember a lot of details of old fights. Is that something they train? Okay. Is it something you train to remember something that was memorable? You probably remember the details of all kinds of things that were super memorable to you. And if you rehearse those to other people, they would say, how the heck do you even remember that? My wife and I often have conversations where I will rehearse details of something that happened 20 years ago. And she will say, how do you even remember that? You have such a good memory. I don't, not really. My memory is pretty subpar, to be honest. But I remember what is memorable, and so do you. So, successful martial artists, athletes in general, tend to be fans of the sport that they do. They tend to watch it, and we get excited about memorable moments. I'll give you one example. There was a fight. It was like 15 years ago. And for a lot of people, it was a pretty forgettable fight, but I thought it was a pretty memorable fight. It was Karo Parisian fighting in the UFC against Dong Hyung Kim. And they're both judo black belts, and they pretty much did judo the whole time. And there wasn't a whole lot of striking action, not a whole lot of damage, but they clinched up and they're trying to throw each other, and it was a very technical judo match, probably the most technical attempt to get a judo throw I had ever seen in the UFC. And a lot of people who didn't care about that stuff in the room, I was watching this with like 30 guys, they were like, oh, this is kind of boring. Meanwhile, the people in the room who trained for that sort of thing were like, oh, we're on the edge of our seat. It's memorable. It's, oh, wow, the two best judo guys in the UFC so far going at it. And then Karo eventually gets an uchimata, and then, the judo guys go nuts, and the other guys are like, finally. Ugh. Anyway, that was a memorable match for me. And I remember the details of it because I was emotionally invested in this particular match because it's some technical stuff I was learning at the time. All right, Poliag says, one of my jiu-jitsu teammates was an Uber Eats cyclist who did a forward roll after getting hit by a car and flying off her bike. No injuries for her, and her bike was messed up. Same story as me, except being the Uber Eats cyclist. But yeah, tumbling can save your life. One of the leading causes of death is accidents. Accidents around the home. Another one of the leading causes of death in the developed world is vehicular accidents, especially for cyclists. And one of the leading self-defenses against accidents, which generally involve falling down, is knowing how to fall safely, which is exactly what tumbling is. Videos for Stuff says, what is the scariest moment of your career as a referee? You know, being a referee isn't super scary to me. I mean, there are some moments I was reffing this match with these big, strong heavyweights who were just like throwing each other all over the place. And I almost got trampled a couple of times. Like, I really had to be up on my toes for that one, just moving out of the way. But, you know, I'm not scared of being a referee. There are moments where I have to be impartial as a referee. This is probably one of the biggest conflicts, is trying to become emotionally detached from what's happening there. And so you have to watch people take punishment and make this assessment. Is it the right time to stop it or not? That's one of the toughest things, because it is so easy to make everybody upset with that decision. The fighter who lost, the fighter who won. The fighter who lost is, of course, going to say, I could have continued, I was fine. The fighter who won, of course, they're happy with that. But at the same time, there was a match I was reffing, and I did everything by the book. It was two female fighters going at it. And one, her nose started bleeding, like a lot. And she's not aspirating blood. She's not breathing the blood in. It's just dribbling. It's kind of gross, but it's not a big problem. I allow the match to continue because, you know, that's what you're supposed to do. She can still compete. And the promoter of the event didn't want that to be televised. Like, hey, call a timeout. Get the doctor in there, clean this up, etc., etc. Now, in the UFC, that would never happen. Not like that. But this was being broadcast on a television network in Beijing, and they're very, very strict in China about the amount of violence and blood you're allowed to show on television. And so, yeah, they wanted to make this look as clean and safe as possible. And so a girl with a bloody nose, even though it's not an inherent danger, yeah, they wanted to... Anyway, so the scary part is just trying to make the calls that, one, first and foremost, keep the fighter safe, and two, yeah, make everybody not hate you completely at the end of the day. It's a balancing act. No Tevin Lex, however you say that, says, how do I get better at MMA pummeling? By doing it. We continuously do live rounds, good, from a body lock, but I always tend to fail to make my partner fall. Well, you've got a bunch of divergent goals while clinching, besides just making your partner or your opponent fall in a fight. So right now, what I would recommend, if you can't get him to fall, you don't understand takedowns, unbalances, etc., keep doing it. I would recommend do at least 10 minutes of clinch sparring every day. And if you're not doing that in class, do it with your training partners afterward. Do at least 10 minutes of clinch sparring daily in your training, especially if that's a weak point for you. I would say the average person just absolutely sucks at clinch fighting, and they're scared of it. And you try to clinch fight with them, and they will fight like a cat in a bathtub to try to disengage from a clinch and often injure themselves on the way out. So, man, get comfortable clinching. That's number one. Spend 100 hours doing clinch sparring in 10-minute increments daily. That's 100 days. That's a fraction of a year. That's easily doable. And I tell you what, after 100 hours of clinch sparring, you will not have this issue. You'll be able to start seeing the holes and feeling the movement patterns of all kinds of different people. And you're going to turn into a clinch expert. Kizu Kaitu, I don't know how to say this or how to read this, says, how do I get used to more than one round? I'm usually used to one and done. Okay, so our friend tires out after one round of whatever combat sport he's doing. The principle of progressive overload, my friends, it works with weight training and it works with endurance training as well. So, on top of that, on top of gradually increasing the load on you, maybe start with one round, right? And then one round in 10 seconds, one round in 20 seconds the next day, and so on. And besides working on your cardio, another thing, probably the most important thing, regulate your breathing. Control your breathing. If you are one and done, if you're dead after one round, you are not breathing. You're not breathing correctly. And you're probably not breathing at all. You're probably holding your breath during, man, I see this so much. People they don't even know that they're doing it, but people who gas out hold their breath. Now, there are a bunch of exercises you can do to try to increase your VO2 max and all these other things. But if you're holding your breath, none of that matters. So check yourself consciously about whether or not you are breathing when you are moving. And to get to the point where you no longer have to think about it consciously, make it a habit to breathe out. Don't even think about breathing and breathe out, because breathing in is automatic. Breathe out the way that you want to move. I've made a bunch of videos on this topic. Please watch them. Sonny Chung says, hi Ramsey, I don't get when people say MMA is not a style, just a rule set. Because couldn't the same things be said about any combat sport? Yes, combat sports are rule sets. People agree boxing is a style, do they? Do they? Some people say that. There are tons of styles of boxing. Did you know that? But it's also just a rule set. Correct. Boxing is a rule set where you can strike with the front of your fist. And there's no inactive clinching. There's no hitting in the clinch. There's no stalling, etc., etc. There are a bunch of rules. No pushing your opponent with the palms and so on. That's a rule set. But there are many styles of boxing. If you don't believe me, you don't know enough about boxing yet, and you haven't seen enough of it. If I were to categorize some of the main schools or styles of boxing, if you look at most Cuban boxers, for example, their style is radically different than, say, Russian and Ukrainian boxers, which is radically different than, say, East Coast North American boxers, which is very different from Mexican boxers. So, yeah, we've got a lot of different styles of boxing out there. Now, the styles are subtle, but yeah, man. What is a style? Let's look that word up. We use words all the time without ever having looked them up, and often we are completely off the mark. Do you know that expression? Oh, what expression am I thinking of? I'll get back to it in a bit. Style, a manner of doing something, a distinctive appearance typically determined by the principles according to which something is designed. A style is a distinctive appearance. Design or make in a particular form. Designate with a particular name, description, or title. So, depending on which definition we are using, and we can see even more definitions of this word, elegance and sophistication, as in aesthetic style. In terms of botany, in a flower, a narrow, typically elongated extension of the ovary bearing the stigma. In zoology, yeah, we don't need to get into that because none of those have any bearing on martial arts styles. So, as far as martial arts styles, is a manner of doing something a good definition of a martial arts style? Sure. Sure. Is a way of painting, writing, composing, building, etc. This would be the etc. if we're referring to martial arts. A way of doing martial arts, characteristic of a particular period, place, person, or movement? Sure. We could look at, say, Hong Jia Gong Fu. Some people call it Hong Gar in English. The Hong family style. It is characteristic of a particular place where the Hong family lived, a particular person, the Hong family, and a particular movement, not physical movement, but a artistic movement. So sure, that applies. So we can be really, really liberal with the definition of style there, and we can call boxing a style, and we can call boxing not a style. Do you guys know the difference between a fruit and a vegetable? Let's skip that question. Mr. Unknown says, "Hey Ramsey, what is the stupidest thing you have ever done in a fight?" Probably jump 5 feet in the air and then land directly in front of my opponent and freeze and not do anything and let him hit me. That was probably the dumbest thing I ever did. I did that in my first professional kickboxing match. It was weird. Am I concerned about long-term brain injury in combat sports? I've already got long-term brain injuries, friends. I retired from professional fighting back in the year 2011. If you're not concerned about long-term injuries in combat sports, then you don't really understand what kind of sports you're in. And it's not just your brain, man. It's the reason I retired, if you're new to this channel, I had a fight back in 2011. My opponent had his wraps loaded with kinesio tape, and with a single punch, broke a hole in my skull, partially blinded me in one eye, left me with a big old dent up here, and it's caused all kinds of problems throughout my life since. And it's something I'm going to have to live with until the day I die. So you have to understand, if you are going to fight, fighting is an inherently dangerous sport which may result in injury or death. And if you're not okay with that, you are not okay with the concept of fighting. So don't do it. At the same time, none of us are getting out of this deal alive. So many questions I've already answered about the loaded wraps things. I've made a bunch of videos on that topic. Go watch them. Maybe I'll answer this. I'll answer this question again. Maybe I'll answer it a little bit differently. Mystery Man says, what happened to the guy with the loaded gloves? I forgave him. That's what happened. He went on to fight in the UFC. And yeah, he did well in his first UFC fight. He retired right after that. Opened up a gym in Dongbei province here in China. He's got a wife and a son. And he seems to be happy right now. And I'm happy for him. Was it legal? No, loading your wraps is not legal. Was it his fault? No, it was the promoter's fault. The promoter gave him that, and fighters back then in China, it was a different era. It's hard to explain. I explained this in a couple of videos. Man, Chinese fighters would wrap their hands with whatever they were given by the promoter, whatever they were given. Like I remember going to this fight, I forget where, some province here in China, where they gave the fighters scotch tape to wrap their hands. And so these fighters are like, oh, well, it's what we have. And they're wrapping their hands with scotch tape. I brought my own sports tape, and nobody checked the wraps, man. It was the Wild West back then. And so this event I was fighting in, the promoter gave each fighter a bag with a pair of gloves, the gloves they're supposed to be competing in, a roll of sports tape, not enough to actually wrap two hands with. And this was a big part of the problem. A roll of gauze, again, not enough gauze to actually wrap the hands with. And then a huge roll of kinesio tape. The fighters in the red corner got red kinesio tape, and the fighters in the blue corner got blue kinesio tape. And the theory was they were going to use this instead of the colored duct tape to put on the outside of the glove to wrap up the vinyl strap so it doesn't come off and cause cuts and abrasions. And for some reason, they, instead of leaving that to the officials to wrap the gloves and sign off on them, they let the fighters do that themselves and left them with a 50-yard roll of kinesio tape. And so I noticed a lot of the Chinese fighters were wrapping their hands with the kinesio tape. And if you don't know what that is, it's stretchy, it's adhesive, and it creates a mobile cast around whatever you wrap it in. In fact, you don't even have to wrap it. You can put kinesio tape on your knee just on one side instead of, say, like a knee brace. And it can hold your knee in place pretty well. Same with your shoulder. It's hard to put a brace on the shoulder, so you can use kinesio tape there. So you stretch this stuff over your hand, and these 27 small bones in the hand become a rock, right? Imagine taking a small bag of marbles, of 27 marbles, and you throw it at somebody in the head. It might feel like getting punched in the face. Ow, that hurts. It's not nice. Take that same thing, wrap it up with kinesio tape, and suddenly, instead of a bag that folds on impact, you've got a solid rock that can break a skull, and that's what happened. So, once again, it was the promoter's fault because, yeah, he was inexperienced. It was his very first attempt doing a fight promotion, and mistakes were made. How do you spell kinesio? I'm writing it in the chat. Kinesio. It's also called rock tape, Titan tape. It's got a bunch of different brand names. We've got a question from Jonathan Blinny, who says, Ramsey, I've started kickboxing 2 months ago. This week I started sparring. I do good, quote, unquote, when we spar using only hands. But when we do complete sparring, punches and kicks, I get overwhelmed. Any tips? Well, you need to get used to that. Obviously, you're more used to using just your hands. And when people start doing the thing you're not used to, it feels like it all falls apart. I understand this. A lot of people who come up in the tradition of kickboxing and then try boxing for the first time have the opposite problem. They get overwhelmed without being able to use the tools that they're used to, combining their punches and their kicks. So this is definitely one of those time will fix the problem type of things, but you want to fix the problem faster. Understandable. What can we do about that? My advice, if you're getting overwhelmed, slow down the sparring. Reduce the power. Go very light. If you're getting overwhelmed, by power and damage, for example, you're not going to learn a whole lot. You're going to develop a type of post-traumatic stress syndrome like, he's just coming after me and killing me. And you're going to ball up into a shell, and you won't get much done. You won't learn a whole lot. So dial back the power. Find some training partners who can dial back the power, dial back the intensity a little bit to allow you to use the principle of progressive overload that we've been talking about in order to adapt, right? How many of you, for example, train in any martial arts class? Any martial arts class where you learn a new technique and you try that new technique with a cooperating partner who isn't fighting back, and you get a few reps so you know where to put your hands and feet, you know how to move your body, you know what the footwork is, and then gradually you increase the resistance, you give yourself some scenarios to give you opportunities to try that technique out again and again and again until you can actually do it live. Because if you attempt to do it live for the first time in live sparring, you won't. You won't. If you don't know what an omoplata is, for example, and I teach you the omoplata, and I teach it to you perfectly, and then I say, all right, let's go spar. How many omoplatas will you hit that day? 0. You will hit 0 omoplatas that day. But if we dial it back and we give you a whole bunch of opportunities to practice getting into position at variable stages of intensity and variable stages of progression along the movement pattern, something magical happens. You get a ton of reps, live reps, finishing the move, setting up the move, etc., etc. So eventually, when it comes time to spar, you actually know how to set it up. You know how to finish it. You know how to troubleshoot it. And then you're actually going to hit it in live sparring. So dial it back a bit if you're getting overwhelmed. And don't be ashamed of that. Here's a question from Liga98 who says, what martial art YouTuber do you most want to collaborate with that you haven't already collabed with? Something I haven't really thought about. And it's something I don't really think about very much since there aren't really any martial arts YouTubers to collaborate with here in Shanghai. So all of my collabs, except for the ones I did in Australia during the Ultimate Self-Defense Championship thing when I met Rokas and Icy Mike and Sensei Seth and Jeff Chan in person, every collab I've done has been like an online Zoom meeting type of thing, talking head type of thing, because that's what you can do with the internet. Except for one, I did a collab with Chewy from the Chujitsu channel, where we both filmed some footage, and then we put our footage together, and that was a lot of fun. So who would I like to do a collab with? I don't know, man, because there are a lot of martial arts YouTubers I would like to meet. Like I'd really like to meet what's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. I can picture his face, and I'm blanking on the name. This is what happens when you get punched in the face a lot. You blank on people's names. Actually, my mom never got punched in the face in her life, and she blanked on names a lot too. So maybe it's genetic. Jordan. From the Jordan Teaches Jiu-Jitsu channel, Jordan Pressinger, that guy. I would really like to meet him. Like as far as martial arts YouTubers, I think I would really enjoy meeting in person and doing like some type of collab or sparring with. He would be a really interesting guy. I think I really like his technique and his abilities and the way he teaches. There's a lot of value in that guy's channel. If you don't subscribe to him, yeah, go follow that dude. Super worthwhile. Who else? Who would you want to see me do a collab with? SBV says, I saw some comments that Dan the Wolfman wanted to make peace with me. Is this still possible? Well, Dan the Wolfman is welcome at any point to stop slandering and libeling me, and there would be peace. That's all it would take. That's all it would take. Like, I've got nothing against Dan. I don't slander Dan, but he's made so many videos with he's made so many videos just lying through his teeth about me and other people as well. And it's saddening. It really is. I don't know, man. So if Dan wants to make peace, all he has to do is stop antagonizing people. Master Wong, I would love to do a collab with Master Wong. Like, I remember years ago when I made that video critiquing Master Wong's crappy rear naked choke videos, all 16 of them. There were a lot. He made the same consistent mistakes in everyone. It's not even a hard technique to teach, but he was like just consistently doing it wrong. So I call him out on that, and suddenly everybody on the internet is like, let them fight. Let them fight. So it would be fun to fight or spar Master Wong, but he's gone on record saying, I have no interest in fighting Ramsey Dewey. He wouldn't even say my name. He's like, that idiot. He called me an idiot. But it would be fun to meet Master Wong in person. It would. It would be fun to like just do some sort of YouTube video. You know what? I've been working on a music video, and I've been working on this little by little for years, and I hope to eventually finish it before it's no longer relevant at all in the cultural zeitgeist. So the whole Master Wong debacle inspired me to start writing a song called For the Streets. And it's got a beat, and I need to write like 7 more verses for it, but it's going to be glorious. Yes, a music video, and I would love it. I would love it if Master Wong could make an appearance in that video. So I took some voice samples for him for the song where Master Wong says, I do these things for the streets. But I noticed he says it kind of rhythmically, so I set it to a beat, and I had to repeat, so it's like, I do these things for the streets. For the streets. Anyway, it's a fun little ditty. But if Master Wong himself could like sing a verse in this in this music video, that would be rad. Son Goku says, I think Shane Faison would be a cool collab too. You should try to make it happen. Oh man, that would be fun. I would like to meet Shane. He seems like a pretty stand-up guy. But here's another question for you. Besides, which martial arts YouTubers would you like to see collabs with? What exactly would you want to see us do together? Spar? Exchange technical ideas? Tell jokes? Do a podcast? What did you have in mind? What do you want to see from martial arts collabs? Dale Brown. Yeah, Dale Brown told me he was coming to China and he wanted to meet me. It hasn't happened yet. But man, I hope Dale comes over at one point. Are there any martial arts YouTubers out in the Philippines? I'm going to the Philippines for a visit in a couple of weeks here. Anybody out there in the chat from the Philippines? So it might be interesting. Again, I'm not too familiar with the area. Dale Brown might kill me accidentally. This is true. Dale Brown is a force to be reckoned with, and you should not take him lightly. Okay, guys, I'm going to answer a couple more questions, then I'm going to skedaddle and start editing some more videos because, man, I've got about 15 videos in the works that I need to edit. And I usually edit videos very quickly, but these ones I've been putting off forever. I've got a bunch of content with my friend Jordan Chow, you know, the knifey, stabby guy that I need to put out there. We've got some more comedy sketches. If you haven't seen my most recent comedy sketch, go watch it. Go watch it. My daughter and I did one right now. It is the most underviewed video on my channel. You want to see Elder Scrolls skits from martial arts YouTuber collabs? I want to see that too, don't you? Master Wong performing in a Elder Scrolls skit. That would rule. Any word on Kicking Power Part 2? Oh, you remember Kicking Power Part 1. You know, people seem to like that video, including the appearance of Evil Elmo and the epic fight scene there. So, yeah, initially when I made that, I had the idea of making videos on how to generate power with a bunch of different types of kicks. So, yeah, not a bad idea. Thanks for the reminder. Shoshana Mofa says, Zheng Wei Li says, everyone knows a little kung fu where she is from. You say Shanghai is different. Zheng Wei Li is basically from a gym, man, and everybody at a gym knows a little kung fu. Shanghai is the biggest city in China. It's one of the largest cities in the world. We're talking about like 30 million people. 30 million people in one city. And like most places in the world, most people don't train in martial arts. Shanghai is the economic capital of China. It's not the political capital of China, but it's the economic capital of China. People in the city are mostly concerned with making money. They go to school, go to work, make money. That's their shtick. So most people do here. But because it's such a huge population, even if you garner a small percentage of that population and convince them to get out there and train, that's still a lot of people. People remember Evil Elmo, man. Out of all the recurring comic relief characters on my channel, Evil Elmo was always one of my favorites. All right, one more question. Interesting. From Harizoto7, who says, could the fighting style of Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter be translated into real moves in real combat sports? Well, if you take out the punches and kicks and just leave the Hadoukens, then definitely you can translate it. I'm joking, guys. Obviously, what they did with Ryu and Ken is they took real fighting moves, real punches and kicks, and then translated them into a video game. So Ryu and Ken use some real techniques. For example, in the original Street Fighter 2, when you are close up and you push forward and then you push. Oh, sorry, not pushing forward. If you push forward and press the strong kick button, you will do the Tomoe Nage, which is a real move. It's a judo technique. If you use the most powerful kick button in close range, you do an axe kick, for example. The axe kick is kind of goofy in Street Fighter, though, because it kicks your opponent twice, once on the way up and once on the way down. In real life, you would just get a single strike, one on the way down. What else? They both use the side kick with their medium attack button. They both use straight punches, jabs, this sort of thing. I mean, these are real techniques that you see in the Street Fighter games that Ryu and Ken use. And then there are some highly embellished ones. For example, the what do you call that? Their spinning tornado kick, hurricane kick, whatever that is. Their rising dragon punch, and of course the infamous Hadouken. And leaping 10 feet in the air in order to do jump kicks or jump punches. The ultimate Superman, but can you imagine if real fighters could jump like 15 feet in the air just to punch somebody in the face? It's so amazing I don't even hate it. Okay, guys, that's what I got for today. Thank you for tuning in to this live stream. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.